Sorry about that. Just one second.
Hello and welcome
No, wait.
to the
Amrita, wait.
ABCD show.
Amrita, wait. Let me broadcast first to the audience. I forgot to broadcast. Just
okay.
Just hold on, yeah? Now I'll just play the video.
Yes. Hello, I'm Amrita Rajpan. I've been teaching for 22 years, but I've been learning my whole life. And that's why I have a company called Edu Learn Grow. I'm a sports nutritionist. I'm an avid traveler and I'm an active Rotarian. I'm also the territory head for the Early Childhood Association Mumbai. I'm founder EduLearn Grow and co-founder the ABCD show.
Hi, I'm Bela Kotwani, also known as Big B. Big for the size of my heart and B for Bela. A fun-loving person with a great sense of humor and a passionate pickleball player. National Core Committee member of Early Childhood Association, founder and principal of Cosmic Kids International, co-founder Puppet Maestros, and co-founder the ABCD Show. The ABCD Show is a show where everything concerned with children is addressed.
We're going to get in eminent experts whose opinions matter. We're going to introduce you to new products. We're going to have theories unfold into practice. We'll discuss mental health and wellness. We'll look at best practices. We'll give you parenting tips and we'll explore tools and strategies to help you teach effectively.
So, if you are a preschool coordinator, parent, teacher, or anyone who has anything to do with children, this show is for you.
So don't forget to like our page to know more about our upcoming events. Hello and welcome everyone to the ABCD show. Thank you all for coming here. And we have Leena today over here with us. I'm so honored to be introducing Leena Asher. Actually, Leena really doesn't need any introduction. You know, she is the pioneer in bringing a documented curriculum to India and made people look at the education for early years through a new lens. Leena is the founder of Kangaroo Kids, Billabong High, and now the co-founder of Corroboree. But let me introduce you to the Leena I know. I worked with Leena for 12 years. I say I worked with Leena because no one has ever worked for Leena. You know, when I called up, when I messaged Leena and invited her to our show, she sent a message to her secretary saying, please accept. Amrita has been a dear colleague of mine. You know what I mean by working with her and not for her? She's never made us feel that we've ever worked for her. We've always worked with her. This is her humility and the person she is. So my experiences, and I'm sure this is going to resonate with a lot of people over here, is that if you've had any interaction with Leena, you get to discover and use your strengths. Leadership takes on a whole new meaning because Leena creates leaders. So she's not only a leader herself, but she's responsible for making people leaders. Thank you, Leena, for everything that you've done for all of us.
Welcome, Leena, to the show. Welcome.
You are so full of support, encouragement. I'm not finished. There's so much to say about you, but, you know, and I'm so overwhelmed. She's always full of support and encouragement. Another thing I want to tell you about Leena's office is it's filled with dinosaurs. So everyone there is in vintage because they've all worked there forever. No one ever wants to leave her. I think I got away because I took a break to study, but otherwise I would have also been part of the furniture, and happily so. you know. So Leena, we're always with you, whether we work for you, work with you, or wherever we are. We're just part of your team always.
Amrita, that's such a warm, fuzzy introduction. Now, if we don't continue, my head will swell so big I won't be able to walk.
No, no, your head's not going to swell so big. Thank you for being the person you are. Just a wonderful human being.
I'm very happy to be here.
So I'm going to start with the questions because everyone here is just waiting to hear. You know, we know you've founded Kangaroo Kids, you've founded Billabong High, you've always been into education. And now we want to know, what is Corroboree? How have you been inspired to start this new thing? Is it to do with education? What is it?
So, you know, when somebody asks me, am I passionate about education? I say I'm passionate about learning. So it's not, I mean, they're all aspects of learning. The only difference is I was in the area of academic learning earlier, where I was infusing the implicit curriculum, the habits of mind, the stuff that we know is the real secret sauce to success. And now I'm kind of just flipped it. I'm now going to be focusing on the EQ, and whatever bits of the IQ get built along the way, so be it. So I've basically just reversed the learning priorities, because I truly believe that no matter what happens, it's the EQ that's going to be more powerful than the IQ. We've got a lot of people in India, a lot of people around the world constantly building intellectual literacy. Even your show is called the ABCD show. So we're all focused on reading and math and science and the facts and the I want to tilt that, and I want to say that, you know, real success doesn't lie in that. Real success lies in us being able to have an optimistic mindset, for us to be able to be, you know, responsible risk takers, for us to be resilient, for us to actually work in flow, in energy flow with the then against it. So these are the things that I have journey and development, and I know how much they've added value to who I am and how I've developed as a human being. And so for me, you know, maximizing human potential is the key, and optimizing human potential is multifaceted. It means that I can discover a child's gifts and bring them to the world. It means, and those gifts have to contribute to humanity in some way. Yeah, so that's the journey I'm on. So Corroboree actually means, you know, when I was looking for a name, Kangaroo Kids has been very, very lucky for me, starting with K. My younger brother Kamal has always supported me and always been very lucky for me. My first angel investor's name is Kedar. He's always been very lucky for me. My partner's name is Kishore, so he's also been very lucky for me. So I was looking for an Aboriginal word, and I found the name Corroboree, which means a sacred gathering, right? It's a sacred spiritual gathering. And so then I said to my co-founder, well, instead of calling it Corroboree with a C, what if we could call it Corroboree with a K, and then that would kind of solve my purpose. So that's literally how Corroboree was born. It was born within, you know, a 20-minute back and forth conversation.
Okay. That's lovely.
Mm.
So Leena, we'll move on to the next now. Topic is resilience for today. So I would like to know that what does it mean to be resilient, and how can this be taught to children? That is what's more important. How do we teach this to children? We know how to do it ourselves, but sometimes when adults don't know, I would say. So how do we inculcate this? And, you know?
So I'll start by explaining what resilience basically is. And it's
Right.
basically a neurocognitive characteristic. It's what we call a habit of mind. And it gives us the ability to bounce back from stress. Now that can be like day-to-day normal stress, or it can be intense stress, right? And how you kind of perceive stress will also depend on how you build your resilience muscle. So for those of us who are looking at this time of pandemic as a time of rejuvenation, of healing, of creating something new, we've obviously developed very strong resilience muscles. And for those of us who are looking at it as a time of adversity and challenge and trauma, have not built as much of a resilience muscle. So, and the upside or the positive in this is that, you know, we understand that the brain has extreme amounts of plasticity. So even if you haven't built it as a neurocognitive muscle when you're young, you can actually build it as you grow older. So resilience is really important in not just in coping with adversity or being able to meet adversity kind of head on, but it also means that resilient people are more likely to lead a successful life because they're more likely to have stronger intuitive instincts. They're more likely to have just normal risk taking ability, which is what an independent entrepreneur always needs to do. And it's a kind of mindset that we need to develop in kids, because going forward, I can assure you, if anyone sees any, if anyone perceives that I have any foresight at all in the area of learning and education, I'm seeing it as that all forward-thinking companies will be looking at these habits of mind, especially resilience, as a very, very important a muscle that the people have developed in the ones that they're going to hire. Because, there's no such thing as life without normal stress and normal adversity, right? I say to kids, the only problem in life is if you think that life is supposed to be without problems. So when these people fall down, they're able to pick themselves up and they're less likely to be depressed.
So what you're saying is basically this can be taught at any age, any time, Leena?
Yes. So if for those of you who want a deeper insight, you can actually follow Moonshot Conversations, where we've done a whole session on resilience, and then we have journals, and these journals. So when Moonshot Conversations and Corroboree kind of come together, what it means is that if I'm a parent who has wounds, right? If I don't have resilience as something that's a muscle and that I understand, I cannot teach it to my kids, because kids don't learn from what we tell them to do. They learn from what they see us doing. So if we've turned up to this time of the pandemic with fear and uncertainty and anxiety, and we're reacting instead of responding to this time, then our children are more likely to learn that as well. So the beauty of the Corroboree that we're setting up is that to be a mindful parent, you actually have to learn the skill set for yourself first. And only then, when you've learned it, will your children see it in action. And, then it becomes a pretty easy skill to pass on.
Okay, so this is something which can be taught through your platform, or it goes through a module, or how is it taught?
So there's a few things I'm doing. At the Corroboree at the back, I am doing a lot of interviews with thought leaders and researchers and scientists in the area of neurobiology, in the area of cognitive science, behavioral science, positive psychology. So I've done an interview around growth mindset. I've interviewed Angela Lee Duckworth around grit. So grit is part of what being resilient is, right? So I'm interviewing all these people to understand what is the research they've done, what are the things that they found, and what are the things that we can, therefore take in as something that we have to build, and then we forward want to build in our kids. So that's the content at the moment that I'm actually creating. So I do all these interviews with all these thought leaders, across all these various areas of research and science and psychology. And then we will start building resources and training and things that parents, teachers, educators, anyone can use, not only for themselves, but for the children that they take care of.
Wonderful.
That will be lovely. Please share with all of us once it's done, Leena. We would love to see all that.
100%. So I'm about 35 modules down, and very soon we'll start putting up snippets of the modules, which is, the last question I ask in every one of the conversations I have is, if you had 3 messages to share with all the parents of the world, what would those 3 messages be? And so that kind of sets the base for parents understanding what that specific conversation will be about, right? So is it around and I've had some really amazing conversations. I mean, I've been fascinated ever since a friend of mine passed away from cancer about 8 years ago. And so, people who have an optimistic mindset, a resilient mindset, when pain happens to them, they kind of feel that it happens for a reason, including trauma like cancer. So I've lost 4 friends to cancer. I've lost 2, caretakers to cancer. And I've currently got one of my dearest friends in the world who is dealing with cancer. And so a large part of that comes, for me, when something happens increasingly in my world, I keep asking why, that it has to have a message for me. So I actually have gone into the whole understanding of the mind-body connection and how, pain that we create in our mind, and it's not always real pain, right? Sometimes it's just perceived pain. So the next moonshot conversation I'm doing is in the power of now, because anything that you think about in the past or in the future is not only not useful, but very often has negative emotions attached to it, like guilt or fear or anxiety. And so how do you kind of stay in the present? Because I know when you have those thoughts, whenever you have those thoughts, and whether it's a single word or it's a narrative, it's a sentence, it's a story you started building in your head, all of them have hormonal releases that happen with them, and that kind of gets flushed into our system. So interestingly, a lot of the cancer that I've been viewing, if I look at the cause of cancer and I see what they went through in their childhood, I can actually connect the dots. So it's some of the research and reading I've been doing around the biology of belief by what was his name, Anyway, The Biology of Belief, the book which is the first time I opened my eyes to the understanding that we don't only have memories in our brain, we actually have memories in every cell of our body. Mm-hmm. And when we experience something, when we feel something, we don't just feel it in our heads, we feel it in our body. So, these are some of the things when we're building resilience, we ask kids to understand that if you're mindful and you're actually aware, you would know where you store stress in your body. I know I store it here. So whenever I have, that a pinched nerve there where my whole kind of right shoulder back kind of feels it's going into spasms, I know I've stored stress and I know it's time that I work on it and release it. So one of the most powerful conversations I've had is with a global TED speaker and the author of a book called Energy Medicine. Her name is Dr. Jill Blakeway, and she kind of started her journey in a similar way in trying to understand the mind-body connection, because she saw some things that kind of that she couldn't connect the dots to. And she started with acupuncture, and then she actually has gone on to understanding how energy works in our body and how we emit energy and how we vibrate energetically and so forth. So Amrita, earlier you were talking about, we work together. Of course we work together because we kind of vibrate at a similar energy. And people who don't vibrate at a similar energy to me won't be wanting to work with me for a very long time. They'll sort of drop off. And people who vibrate at a similar energy, that means we're attracted to each other because our energies are attracted to each other, because there's a certain vibrational frequency that makes it easy, right? So when we're working together, it's easy working together. It's not like I'm pushing against you. And the minute I realize that I'm pushing someone, I know that if I'm pushing someone, I'm going to create an energy force for them and for myself somewhere in their system and my system that's not good for either of us. So very naturally, those kind of people just fall away. They don't work with me for very long. So if chances are, if you've worked with me for a year, you're probably going to be there for a very long time, just because.
Forever. As I said, you're surrounded because we've always been with you. And it's difficult to shake people off you. So you have a very strong pull there, Leena. But Leena, getting back to what you were saying, this was so interesting about storing everything in your body, all these impulses or memories,
Yeah.
are stored in your body because you have these experiences when you're young. And then after that, they sort of stay with you even though you don't remember it every day. So something happened to you when you were 4 years old, and when you're 40, you get cancer, from what I understand, or maybe even
Yeah.
later. So that memory has been something which has been carried forward from that much time, even though you are not aware of it.
So it sits in your subconscious, right? And it sits in your biology. So it may not be sitting in your conscious memory, but it's sitting there in your subconscious memory and in your nervous system. So I'll give you an example of what I when I first understood it. So I went for the journey with Brandon Bays. So Brandon Bays is somebody who overcame cancer, and she teaches you the process of. So basically, if you've got an older you and an inner you, heal wherever the pain is, right? Because you've just kind of downloaded and stored it, but you can actually get to it and heal it. So one of the things, and we don't understand our patterns. So when I was very young, I'm talking about like 9 months of age, 10 months of age, it's the first time my parents realized I'm born with dislocated hips, and we were in Africa at the time. So my parents, in order to help me, brought me back to India, or my mom did, brought me back to India. And I was put in frog plaster, which means I can't move. So it's like a frog plaster. So your legs are really, because it's pushing your wherever the dislocation is. It's pushing the hip and that the joint back together, the ball and socket joint back together. So they couldn't look after me in Africa. So my mom left me with my grandmother, who took care of me really well. But as a child, when I don't have the CEO of my brain working, which is the prefrontal cortex, yeah. So if I don't have the executive function working, I am. What have I perceived as a child? I've perceived that I've been abandoned, right? So and therefore it's like a withdrawal of love. Now you don't realize as you're growing up, but and people will use power over you, and they do it unintentionally as well. So everyone's coming from a place of woundedness when they react, and it's not like they're consciously trying to hurt you. So whenever I did something my dad didn't like, he'd stop talking to me. And for me, that was a withdrawal of love, and I just could not handle it. So I would go back and push to get back his acceptance and love. Then I went into my marriage, and my ex-husband used it in the same way. So whenever I did something he didn't completely approve of, he would stop talking to me. So for me, that's just like an intense withdrawal of love. And again, I would have the same reactions. So we have a part of our brain called the amygdala, which kind of goes into a fight, flee or freeze response. And it goes into that based on perceived threat as well. So because as a child, my perceived threat was being abandoned, anything that came close to it in my adult life would have the same trigger, right? So I would have the amygdala hijack, which means I'd go into high states of emotional reaction that was not really warranted to the situation. And then I did the journey with Brandon Bays, and towards the end of the understanding, then she makes you do this whole process, and you're sitting around a campfire. So the older you is talking to the younger you. It's the first time I understood where that came from, and I was flowing with tears as the older me sort of comforted the younger me and told the younger me that I no longer had to feel that way, because now I understood I was not abandoned. I was actually just left to be taken care of in a way that my parents couldn't at the time. So as I said, it doesn't have to be real trauma or real negative experiences. It can be perceived trauma or perceived negative experiences. And after I've done that journey, it's like I've completely repatterned. My dad can stop talking to me. Anyone can stop talking to me. It doesn't affect me at all. And the beauty of it is this: when something doesn't affect you, it goes away. It's like life will keep on teaching you the lesson till you learn it. And only when you've learned it does life as the teacher or nature as the teacher go away. So nobody does that to me anymore. It's amazing. So one of the things I tell people, if you're seeing a repeated pattern in your life, you know, if you're attracting the same sort of boyfriend again and again and again, it could be abusive, or it could be, you know, whatever it is. Whenever you're experiencing the same thing again and again and again, it's a pattern, you really do then have to dig deep as to what it is.
So, Nina, this brings me to the next question. You found out your pattern, you know, much later, and you possibly would not have found out your pattern without expert help, because I'm sure that when you were 10 months or 1 year, you weren't conscious of, you know, being abandoned. As you said, it was a perceived thing. When you're looking at that, people don't know these things which have impacted them and have impacted them so late. How does a person bounce back?
So that's why moonshot conversations, right? So the first thing is one of the things I've got against our conventional education system is it stops curiosity. The way I've grown up, I've always been curious. I mean, when I started the school, I said, why does it have to be this way? Why do walls have to be white? Why can't they be colorful? And that's how we brought in the design that everyone's doing today. When we started, I was like, why can't Indian teachers teach to a creative curriculum? And then I realized, oh, that's partly because they haven't gone through it themselves. So then you can start working on the what and how. You know, it's basically as Simon Sinek says. Now, I didn't know that process earlier, that my brain kept asking why, and then it would work out the how and the what. But, you know, if you watch Simon Sinek and how he explains it, it's exactly how my brain works. So for anything I'm doing, my first question is why. I mean, I still, you know, I still keep asking people, you know, why do we use the word sir and ma'am in India when that was something thrust upon us by the British? And people just don't seem to be able to shake it. You know, I know that I've left Kangaroo Kids in Billabong High now. I know very soon the likelihood of, you know, the principals that I've inducted and I've trained, and they leave the system, I mean, I'm hoping that it doesn't go back to a sir and ma'am culture that once was, you know, because people just kind of tend to fall into what they're used to, the culture, the society, the way the brain has been trained. And I mean, I want to actually break past that. So I'm constantly asking why. So if I see a repeated pattern in my life, I keep asking why. So if I see the cancer, I keep asking why. So one of the most powerful things, and if you watch my TED Talk, it's around why we should be asking why questions instead of what and where questions. I mean, who cares where Hitler's Germany happened and, you know, I'm interested in why it happened. You know, why did people blindly follow him and be able to do that? When I hear, you know, the Jim Jones story, and, you know, why would mothers actually, you know, when every ounce of their being is about survival of their young, how would they actually, you know, give them poison and then poison themselves? So these why questions don't stop in my life. And that's the main thing. If we can keep kids curious to keep on asking why something is a certain way, then they will go to seek the answers. It's only a curious mind that goes to look for answers, right? So the problem is for the rest of us, you know, I believe, you know, life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And therefore, because I believe that very strongly, I'm constantly, and if you watched last episode on Moonshot Conversations, which was about the reticular activation system, it's only when I ask the question, why, will it become a goal for my brain? And then I will start actually observing and noticing the signals that come to me to answer the question. But I have to pose the question first, because otherwise my reticular activation system is not going to be directed towards solving the question.
Yeah.
The problem, the question, the curious, you know, mind. So, I mean, for any parent sitting out there, you know, your kids are going to be asking you why a million times a day. I remember, Amrita, and it was at your school, when a parent said to me, you know, the kids of Kangaroo Kids are very arrogant.
Huh.
And I said, can you explain that to me? You know, what do they do? Or what do they say that makes you feel that they're arrogant? So she said, my neighbor's kid goes to the school, and every time, you know, my neighbor says, go to sleep, the kid asks why. Eat your lunch, the kid asks why. do this. The kid asks why. I said, well, if the parent bothers to answer it,
Yeah.
then the child's brain will know why, and the child's brain will actually go to sleep and eat the food and do all the other things, you know. We want kids to follow our rules and everything without us getting them to understand why. Amrita, if you remember when we did instructional design,
Yes.
even
Yes.
those many years ago, even before I completely understood the neuroscience of it, I would put the aim of the lesson at the beginning of the lesson.
True.
Yeah, that was for teachers to know why we're doing the lesson, right? Because if I'm not engaging your brain as to knowing why it's doing something, it's less likely to do it. And you know, intuitively, I knew that as a teacher way before the research showed it to us. You know, so today research says if you take two groups of people and you give them a task, and you give one group the reason for doing the task, and the other is just told to do the task. The group that's given the reason why they're doing the task will outperform the other group every single time.
Yes.
So when we know the neuroscience of human behavior and human psychology, why don't we use it?
True. And context makes all the difference. You know, why you're doing what you're doing. And once you find that meaning and the thing becomes meaningful, you know, you want to do it or you don't want to do it. Whatever.
Or you have a strong reason why. So, Amrita, the other thing that's always been there in the organization and with the team has been, I don't want a group of yes people around me. If you don't agree with something I'm saying, you voice it, and then one of us has to argue the other one down.
True.
Right? Not by virtue of authority, but by virtue of logic and reason and example. So Amrita, you remember Shama, right? Yeah. Shama grew up learning how to read phonetically, and she always taught reading phonetically. And intuitively, I didn't think reading purely phonetically was the way forward. And maybe that's because I didn't learn how to read phonetically. I'm a visual learner. So when I wanted to create a new system of reading, I wanted to have the auditory, kinesthetic, and the visual together. And she was very, very, very much pro the phonics. And we actually argued the other one down until she actually saw the merit in what I was saying. And at other times, I remember, I'm going a little off topic, but
we're loving this.
There's a book that I do in grade 2, The Owl Who's Afraid of the Dark, right? And in it, the owl is afraid of the dark, and he says, dark is such and such, and dark is such and such. And in that, we wanted to teach kids, that when they burn firecrackers, that the firecrackers actually made by children. So we kind of extend the literature unit into real life, and teach whatever we can. We kind of squeeze the dry of every single thing we can possibly use.
True.
So in that, I was talking about Diwali and the firecrackers and what it does to animals, and where they get made, and the noise pollution. And a parent, of another religious background came to me and said, actually a Hindu parent came to me and said, this is unfair. You're not talking about this, and this of this other religion, and this, and of this other religion. And I had no argument for that. And so therefore, when I have no argument for that, he argued me down, and I went back and I changed the instructional design and the worksheets.
Yeah. So that's one thing I remember so clearly about working with you, is you had a voice in the organization. I had a voice in the organization, not you, but everyone had a voice in the organization. And it was what was best for the child, which was always put up front. And that was what was important. Yeah, but now, Leena, getting back, how do you bounce back when you have all these impacts on you? So, something's happened to me when I was 5 years or 10 years or whatever, and I'm riddled with guilt or fear or, labels. You have children who are fat, children who have been bullied, and they have these labels which are stuck onto them. So they're living with this. They could change form, they could change size, they could change anything, but they're still that same person.
The stigma is still there, yeah.
Yeah, the stigma is there and it's attached in your head, you know?
So Amrita, Bella, let's go back to our childhoods,
Yeah.
right? Because today, increasingly, children can't tolerate discomfort, and they've got their parents solving everything for them. I grew up in Australia. When I went to Australia, I wasn't well off. I didn't have all the trendy stuff, and I was Indian, and I was gawky. I used to be really thin and gawky, and I was not cool, and all those things, right? And because my parents were too busy, they didn't come and fix it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was allowed to go through the experience, right? So there's no such thing as a life without ups and downs. There's no such thing as a life that's never going to have its share of someone teasing you, or you feeling, hurt in some way, or you feeling that life's unjust or unfair in some way. It's a part of being human, right? I mean, part of being human is the cycle of suffering, that we will suffer, but we can choose to suffer or not to suffer based on how we think about it. So, culturally, we've set up the world in which, and partly it's happened because, we have 24/7 media. And 24/7 media is telling all of our brains that the world is unsafe, where actually the fact is the world's never been as safe as it is. And so because we've set ourselves up to thinking that the world is not fair and it's not safe, we put all these things in place to protect our kids. I used to walk an hour to school and an hour back in Australia when it was freezing cold. It was boiling hot. I had leg surgeries. So that 1 hour, 1 hour, which is over a kilometer to school and a kilometer back, caused me some amount of, especially in the cold, caused me some amount of pain and distress, right? But there was no one there to fix it for me. I had to fix it for myself. I had to feel it. Yeah. So one of the things I say to parents is let kids feel their feelings. One of the things that used to astound me, Amrita, when we were teaching, and I think again I saw this in your school, a kid falls down and the mother picks the kid up and hits the floor. Yeah. Naughty floor.
I've seen that.
So what are we telling kids, that you're a victim of the floor? We're not telling kids, you just fell and it's cool, Are you hurt? Where are you hurt? So that both responses or reactions are wrong. One is to hit the floor and blame the floor for your kid falling down. And the other is to tell the kid, oh, you're brave, you're a boy and you don't cry and get up and dust it off. Right? So both extremes are not okay. The middle path is that, we ask the kid, how is he feeling? If he's in pain, we ask him how big the pain is. Right? We identify the words specifically. So if you go through self-awareness and you download the journal on Moonshot Conversations, I've got a list of emotional states because, when a kid says he's angry, is he disgusted or is he grumpy or is he irritated? We need to give kids the ability to articulate the words, to label the words and articulate the words, because they don't have that capability at that stage themselves. And then we measure the intensity of how big it is. So if moms out there are watching, there's a lovely story called Ruby Has a Worry. And it teaches kids that it's normal to have a worry. And it teaches you how to feel it and move past it rather than suppress it in your body. Because if you suppress that worry in your body, it's going to sit somewhere. It's going to cause you cancer someday, or some sort of blood pressure or some sort of illness somewhere in your body someday. So why not help kids to deal with it today? So, and then there's a whole lot of activities you can do. So if you're reading Ruby Has a Worry, how big is the worry? What color is the worry? Where is the worry sitting in your body? Can you feel it? Can you breathe through it? So we use mindfulness and meditation to heal. The problem is there's so much of awareness around meditation and healing and happiness, but depression is consistently on the rise because culturally we've set up this life that is always supposed to be happy. We can choose to create the meaning of happiness by anything that happens to us, So by certain things that we tell ourselves that, we have an experience we don't like, are we going to allow it to make us bitter or better? Right? Um, and if you believe that everything happens to you for a reason, then everything comes to you to teach you something. So even if it's a negative experience, you have an optimistic mindset because you know it's come there to teach you something. And then you ask, you know, why has this happened to me? What does it come to teach me? And how do I learn from this and move on? So, you know, we've got to stop trying to fix things for kids immediately.
Yeah. And stop being so overprotective.
Yeah, because we just got like batteries of helicopter moms out there.
Very
And,
true.
and you know, on the other side, we've got to stop pushing our kids. You know, we're overwhelming and over managing and over scheduling our kids all the time. You know, so I remember, you know, kids, some parents would ask us, Amrita, can kids do 2 batches of school?
Yes.
For what? You know, can kids after school then go for swimming and then jazz and then knowledge club and then this and then this and then this? I mean, we feel that like the more we stuff into our kids, the more they're going to be able to cope with the world. No, kids need time to ask the questions why, and to, you know, and they ask it when they're walking around and they see a shadow and they actually have the time to say, hey, why did that happen? You know, or they fall down and they hurt themselves and they bleed and they say, hey, why did that happen? Or then they heal and they see the scab and they say, why did that happen? Those are the powerful moments in a kid's life. Or, you know, I'm playing with you, Amrita, and you snatch my toy and I say, why did that happen?
Yeah. I think you need the time for it.
You need time for it. Yeah. So just, you know, every parent, for almost every Facebook Live I did when I was still with Kangaroo Kids, the parents were, everything was around boredom. And I'm saying, you know, it's at the times of the pandemic that society, you know, in the past have come up with really creative things that they've sort of found or imagined into being. Because where do things get created? They get created in our mind. But if our mind is not bored, it's not seeking to answer any questions. You know, because if you're constantly if I'm constantly getting an onslaught of stuff from the external world, I've got no time to create anything that comes from my internal self.
True. Yeah, there's so much stimulation outside and there's nothing happening inside because you're just dealing with what is there outside.
Yeah.
So wonderful, really, and something to think about.
But somehow it's never taught in
Yes.
school. No, that's another problem. It's
Sorry?
never taught in school. It's never taught in school, all these things. So we have to be a little more careful when we are dealing with children. But I believe, Leena, that you've incorporated a lot of energy science, neuroscience, behavior science in your school. So it's not done in any of the academic schools otherwise, or in the curriculum. It's not a part of the curriculum. So how does it impact children? Yeah.
So intuitively, as a teacher, if I know that the secret source of happiness, contribution, finding your meaning and purpose, and those to me are what counts as success, right? Do I wake up every morning excited about what I'm going to do today? Do I go through the process of what I'm doing in a state of flow and high energy because it just excites me so much? Those are the things that I count as success, right? And truly, when you do that, somehow the other things that when we don't count it as a success, like, you know, financial well-being, that kind of happens because you've got your eye so much on the meaning and purpose. So yeah, so you infuse it, so your kids start thinking very, very differently. You know, so give you a few examples. If because you're getting kids, there's convergent thinking and divergent thinking. You know, one is where you say, you know, you're constantly teaching fact after fact to a kid. And then you're asking him a question and he just has to find that fact piece from his memory and fit it in, right? That doesn't do anything. That's like you're turning your kid into a Google. But the other thing is that they start thinking about things differently. So if, you know, if you're doing Harry Potter and, you know, Harry's going to this school of witchcraft and wizardry, you would ask kids, you know, what would an Elon Musk school look like? You know, of innovation. Right? Because he thinks so differently. So what would the subjects be? And just by virtue of doing that, your kids start thinking very, very differently. And yes, then they still have to sit the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and the 12th board exams, but these bits don't leave them. These bits will serve them throughout their life. So it serves them because it keeps them curious. So say for instance in the TED talk I talked about, if I want to teach perspective, one is to teach them the theory of perspective. The other way is to say, this chapter in your history book is, about the partition is written from by an Indian author for an Indian classroom. I want you to research and rewrite this from a Pakistani author's point of view for a Pakistani classroom. Suddenly they understand how politics works, they understand how the media works, they understand how cognitive bias works, they understand perception, they understand so much. They don't need to understand the theory of it. They basically, when they put it in practice, the brain start engaging with the world in a different way. I'm one of the few educators who's constantly pro technology, because technology's got the power to do so much. But if we're using technology only to consume knowledge, which is just to absorb, videos, et cetera, then that's not correct. We actually have to use technology along the Bloom spectrum of synthesizing and creating stuff. So if again I'm teaching history, I'd say, this chapter on Mahatma Gandhi is now being written in today's time with where Gandhi's a contemporary figure and he's got social media. Now create the Facebook posts, create the Twitter feeds, create the Instagram. So suddenly I don't have to tell them how they can use social media for good, right?
I love this idea.
I can get them to understand it in depth because they're actually engaging with it in that way. So tomorrow when they want to have a voice to fight something or to make a stand, they know that they can use social media in powerful ways. The thing that I do teach them about social media is, and it's very simple and it's one sentence and every kid gets it. Remember, everyone is posting their engagement and marriage on Facebook. Nobody in the world is posting their breakup and the divorce on Facebook. So when you're going through somebody's feed, understand how your brain is perceiving it, that everyone else's life is hunky-dory, whereas yours is. Yeah. And the minute you do that, kids will stop. And, in the Power of Now, I'm going to be talking about on Sunday how social media, how taking photographs actually robs us of the moment. And if we give the power of that knowledge to kids and we get them to understand how their brain takes in a moment when they're taking a photograph of it and how their brain takes in a moment when when they're living that moment, what is that big difference in their brain and their level of happiness? What are the hormones that they're releasing in both cases? Which kid is stupid enough then to constantly be taking pics?
Pictures are only creating memories for later on, but actually live the moment and enjoy that first.
Yeah,
That's
I
what's
think
more
now they will become mindful of the moment and
Right.
all the moments that they're living, truly the power of now.
Absolutely.
So well put, really so nice. And if this goes to a child and goes to a parent, who is mindful and who is teaching their child to be mindful minute to minute, I think there's going to be a great impact.
So I'm constantly telling kids and adults that, we have a negative bias in the brain and it's there for, I'm not going to go into the science of it, but it's there for evolutionary reasons. So, it just, in basic terms, we have to look out for the snake rather than look for the mango. Because if we didn't find the mango, we'd still be living the next day. Whereas if we didn't spot the snake, we wouldn't. So our brains have a negativity bias. So basically it takes 5 times as much feeling good, to one thing of feeling bad. So if we go on a holiday and we've had this brilliant experience of, watching sunsets and the blue ocean and, the great food and wine and dance and friendship and laughter and song. And then our bag gets stolen and our mobile phone and some money is gone. Which sticks when you come back? It's the negative experience that sticks.
Very
And and the negative experience sticks for a reason. So you basically have to be very mindful of what I'm calling, marinating your brain in the good experience.
Yes. Yes.
In fact, it happened to me once. I lost my camera, the video camera. I had done all the shooting and everything is just gone. I said, my God, what am I going to do?
But that's what you remember. If I ask you what else you remember about your holiday,
Yes.
it's not very good.
Yeah. So all the good moments get lost in
Yeah.
that.
Because that's the way our brain's wired. I mean, it's so we basically have to be aware of it, observe when it happens, be mindful, so whenever I and this came through one of the interviews that I did, and it's only like say 2 weeks ago, and I'm already working on it, and it's like, wow. So I interviewed Dr. Rick Hansen, and he's written a book, Hardwired for Happiness, and he does all this work in the neurobiology point of view, and he teaches you how to weave positive experiences so that your brain actually starts getting wired for the positive rather than the negative. So when I sit outside, if you can see the view at the back, I've got the stunning view, in Goa, and I've got my cup of coffee. I'm actually soaking in the experience as much as I can of all my sensations: the taste of the coffee, the view, the breathtaking view, the sound of the birds. I'm basking, I'm savoring in that experience, because I know then that experience, if I have a negative experience through the day, that one will override the negative one. So we have a kind of base set level for happiness. So we need to keep increasing that base set level. So we just internally become happier.
True.
Very nice.
True.
A lot of people want to know about your link. Can you share your link in the chat, the Moonshot Conversations ka link, if you have?
I can
People
share
are
it.
curious.
I'm
Yeah,
a
you can
great
share.
fan, and I'm a great fan of Leena's Moonshot Conversations, and I need to hear it every time I go for a walk. And I may have repeated hearing the same thing again and again, but you get hooked onto it. So, Leena, I will put it up later after we finish this in the chat so that everyone gets to hear this. This is a must hear.
I swear.
Yes. So, Leena, someone over here has asked that they want to know some hands-on activities that you can suggest to stimulate more creativity for school children, preschool children, because children are apparently not getting the creativity from school.
So kids are basically creative by nature, right? So we kind of we outschool, we out creative. However, we program them out of creativity. So depending on the age of the child, I mean, just don't tell the kids how to create something. Just give them the resources, right? Stop buying them ready-made toys like, battery operated cars, and don't buy the Legos that are do-it-yourself with, step-by-step instructions to building something. Buy them the Legos that make them imagine and make them put it together and, have them create. If you do not stuff your kids' lives with battery operated toys, do it yourself, all, kits and all of that, your kids will make toys out of pots and pans. Your kids will create their toys themselves. So that would be kind of like the advice. As much as possible, if they're watching TV, make it interactive watching. So make it like National Geographic. And while you're watching, ask your kids questions that make them probe their imagination for an answer. Don't give them the answer, but just ask them a question that gets them to think about, possibilities why. So a creative brain, so creativity is not just about art and craft, right? Creativity is about allowing the mind to do things in a different way. And the more experiences you give your kids, and I'm not talking about stuffing their experiences through this class and this class and this class, but through stories and through music and movement and through just having the resources available but not telling them how to use them, you will spark creativity.
I think also just allowing them to be bored for a bit, because then they will start creating things to keep themselves occupied. I think all the time, like you said, you've got a gym class and you've got a music class and you've got all these classes coming on. I think it's sometimes just okay to let them be and let them sort of create something for themselves also.
It's not okay. If you want a creative child, it's
Yeah.
mandatory that you allow your child to be bored. And
Yes,
don't fix
very
that.
true.
Don't fix that for him all the time.
True, true, true. So great. That was wonderful. And
Do you have any more questions? Do we have? I can't see any more
no,
questions.
I can't see any questions. I think everyone has just loved the session.
Great,
And I
so
think Leena
glad.
has answered all the questions.
Yes.
Leena,
So
we're
thank-
waiting for Corroboree to come out
Yes.
so that we see what's happening on that platform. I think you just give us a little glimpse. Oh, there is one more question. So let me take that. Since it's so important to train a child's mind from the early years of their childhood, including the growth of their mental and emotional health, do you think meditation and positive affirmations can help?
Okay. So the first thing is we're not training the mind. Training is a push. Yeah. We are encouraging, we're allowing, we're inviting the mind. Yeah. So first, let's just change the language, because when you push, if you think about physics, when you push against something, it creates force. Yeah. So you're not forcing your kid to do anything, or you're not training him to do anything, because that's a push kind of language. So you're allowing him. And what was the question again?
So I'm reading it. Yeah, the growth of their mental and emotional health. Do you think meditation and positive affirmations can help?
So if the parent can watch the last Moonshot conversation on the reticular activation system and goal setting, I'll actually give you the process. So just blindly saying affirmations does nothing for you. If I say I'm going to be thin, I'm going to be thin, I'm going to be thin, it'll do nothing. I can.
Didn't do nothing for me.
so we've kind of.
I lost all my hope in that moment.
So we've kind of taken The Secret as a
Right.
self-development tool, and it's a very easy thing to do, right? To say that I'm gonna
Ask, believe, and receive.
yeah, so let me tell you how it is. If you've grown up in a house thinking that money is the root of all evil, and then you sit there saying, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be rich. The minute you come into a little bit of wealth, your subconscious will thwart it. Right? So you have to reprogram the subconscious. Having said that, you can start teaching your child the 4-step procedure of achieving anything he wants to, which is creating the intention, and the intention has to come from him and not from you. So it has to come only if the intention is an inner source of motivation. It's my true soul's desire. Is it an intention? If one parent asked me, can I have an intention for my child? No, you can't. Your child has to have an intention for himself, whatever it is, whether it's getting on the basketball team or, being first in math or whatever it is, it has to be his own intention. The second is to write it down and pin it somewhere where your mind is constantly seeing it, because then you're starting to feed it to your reticular activation system. Yeah. Remember, your reticular activation system is like a filter, which will direct your thoughts somewhere. So then the third step is to feel the emotional state of having achieved it. So you start reprogramming your subconscious to believe in that. And I explained the science of that. And it's something that all coaches use with their sports men, etc., etc. And then the fourth process is the action that gives you traction. So if my intention is I will be, and it always has to be in the positive, right? So it doesn't, I won't say I will lose weight, because that's a negative sentence. I will be such and such weight by such and such time, and I pin it somewhere. So that's my intention, but it has to be my true intention, right? So I actually have started losing weight now. Why? Not because my true intention is to be healthier, because it's somehow never spoken to me, but it's because when I'm constantly on Moonshot conversations, my face either has a double chin or it doesn't. So I'm trying to have it not have a double chin, right? So that's why I actually so it's interesting to understand how your driver happens if the intention is truly that intention. So if you don't really give a shit about your weight, and you say because culturally you believe, or societally you believe you should be thinner, and then you say I will be such and such weight by such and such time, forget it, nothing's going to happen, because it's not your true desire and intention. So first that. The second is that I've written it down, I will be such and such weight. The third is I will feel I will feel what it's like to wear all my old clothes.
Mm-hmm.
I will feel what it's like to walk into a room and have everyone say, wow, you look fabulous. So I'll feel all those feelings. I will actually be that thin self of me, and I will feel it. Or I'll feel myself on moonshot conversations, not having a double chin. And then the fourth step is to take action that gives you traction. So if I do all that and then I just go and eat some 10 donuts, nothing's going to really happen, right? True. And so just in the moment, you just only have to take care of the moment, which is the next moonshot conversation we'll talk about.
I know what I'm going to do now on my wall in front of me. As soon as
Yes.
I open my eyes. So when everyone else sees me on the ABCD show, they will not see all this extra.
I have to work doubly hard for you now.
We have one or two more questions, Leena. There's one question which Vidushi Govil says, how do I work with a child who already shows good EQ already? And I'm very afraid the school is doing damage, and I'm tempted to take her off school for a few years.
So I'd need to know more about how, if she can express to me how she feels the school is doing damage. See, understand, any muscle we build doesn't get taken away, right? So when parents would ask me, but my kid's going to Billabong and then he'll be great till grade 8, but then in 9 and 10 he'll have to rote learn to pass the exam. I said, yes. Till I have some influence over the boards, or I'm actually able to set the papers, yes, your kid will have to rote learn in 9 and 10, but doesn't mean what the muscles that he's built along the way, won't stay, right? So if your child, and some children are naturally born with high EQs, like my son. My son turned vegetarian when he was 4 years old, and he used to love chicken tikka, fish fingers. And I don't know when he understood the difference between plant and animal, and it seemed to be that precise moment when he looked at me and imagine the emotional intelligence. He's not asking me, he's not telling me how would, he's asking me to empathize with myself as a mother. So he actually asked me, Mama, how would you feel if somebody killed me and ate me? So he's putting himself in my shoes and giving me the question, right? And I didn't know how to react. So I said, I'd cry. He says, I can hear this chicken's mama crying for him.
Oh my God, so sweet.
So that part of my son, through all his education, can't be taken away. Yeah? As long as we keep on demonstrating the same sort of, the same sort of empathy and the same sort of compassion, he will keep on building that as a muscle, and he'll keep on fighting the external world around it.
True.
So yeah, so just, it's I don't like to be given responsibility to answer something in a way that could alter a child's life without knowing the full context and all the moving parts. So, I don't think it's in my place to say leave the school or don't leave the school till I actually know, what this mom's actually talking about. So it's too heavy a burden to bear. I need to sleep well at night.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, can I tell the parents if they have any more questions that can they post it on the ABCD page and you will be answering them?
Sure.
Is that okay? Yeah? So everybody who has a question which has been unanswered or who still has questions, you can write them down on the page, post them on the ABCD page, and then Leena will answer them at her leisure.
Just tag me when you post them on the ABCD page, so I actually know that I have to respond.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
Makes sense.
And
So
I can
thank
see
you, Leena.
you've got some lovely, people have just loved the show. So
Yes.
So that's been wonderful.
People and we have loved it too. I've learned so much from
We
Leena.
have loved it.
Yes. So thank you, Leena, for being here today.
We were on a show.
It's a pleasure.
Just having a conversation with Leena in office as always.
Right.
So, we are all just, if you hear what Nikola Tesla says, and you were earlier talking about, who were you talking about? Abraham Hicks. They all say the same thing. That they know that there's a source out there, and they derive their understanding and their energy and their everything from the source. And I'm no different. Even when I used to work with the instructional design team on integration across discipline areas, and they go, wow, where did that idea come from? I'd say, even I don't know. You know, so I always believe we're just conduits.
True.
To contribute to the world in whichever way we can. So thank you so much, Amrita. Thank you so much, Bella, for having me on the show.
We have loved having you on our show, Leena. It was very enlightening talk that we heard from you today. And I've also noted down the 4-step procedure, which is definitely going to come to use.
You, sweetheart Bella, do not have to note it down. If you go to Moonshot Conversations and you go to the fourth, the last episode, which is around it's called the RAS, Reticular Activation System and Goal Setting. Even if you don't want to watch the video.
I watch it, I love watching it. Don't worry.
So if you watch the video, you get a deeper understanding. And then there's a journal for every single Moonshot conversation we do. There's a free downloadable journal, which gives you more of the information and the procedure, and it gives you the activities you can do firstly for yourself and then for your child.
Lovely.
Right? So please.
Yes, I'll definitely go there. And I'm sure a lot of people will benefit. The people are watching just now will benefit from it. So please go to Moonshot Conversations, all of you, and get a lot of insights from what Leena has to offer us.
And the downloads are free, so please download them for you, for your family. You know, it's got lots and lots of activity and lots of understanding. And thank you so much.
I would also like to take this time to thank my audience for being here today with us. And I would like to inform that the speaker for the next event, that is episode number 6, is Sonia Relia. And her topic is skill building with limited resources. So stay tuned. You can go to our Facebook page and also look for the latest upcoming events that will be coming down there. And also on our YouTube channel, you can go and like and subscribe. And if you missed any of the episodes in the past, you can go there and have a look at it. Thank you, everybody, and see you till next Wednesday, same time.
We just loved having you here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next Wednesday, same time, 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye, Leena. Thank you.